She thought she'd found love. Instead, she found a $2 million life insurance policy with her name on it, and a dead body she swears she didn't create. Here's the question that kept investigators awake. Can a 17-year-old girl be both victim and murderer? Can someone groom you into loving them, then groom you into killing them? Because when Vincent Hawthorne died in an alley 3 blocks from his ex-wife's apartment, the evidence pointed in every direction except the truth. And Brielle Mitchell, teenage diner waitress, aspiring artist, supposed girlfriend, became the most confusing suspect in Idaho criminal history. Think about the first time someone made you feel truly seen. Not just noticed, seen. Like they understood parts of you that even you didn't recognize yet. Now imagine discovering that feeling was engineered, manufactured, that you were a project, not a partner. This is a story about the space between victim and accomplice, about how predators don't just take, they make you complicit in your own destruction, and about what happens when the man manipulating you dies before anyone can prove what he did. Stick with me, because by the end of this story, you'll have to answer the same question the jury faced. Guilty or the most tragic innocent you've ever encountered? If you're already hooked, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. This case gets darker than you can imagine, and I need to know you're ready for where we're going. Subscribe if you want more stories that make you question everything you thought you knew about guilt and innocence. Now, let me take you back to where it started. Not with death, with a Tuesday afternoon that felt like rescue. The first time Brielle Mitchell saw Vincent Hawthorne, she was counting pennies at the register of Romano's Diner in Boise, Idaho. Her fingers were sticky from syrup, her apron stained with coffee that had spilled during the lunch rush. She was 17, saving for art school, dreaming of anywhere but here. He walked in at 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon. Vincent wasn't handsome in the way boys at school were handsome. His face held a kind of weathered elegance that came from living, really living. Salt and pepper hair swept back from a forehead lined with stories she'd never heard. 52 years of breathing. 52 years of secrets packed into a frame that still moved with purpose. He ordered black coffee. Nothing else. When their eyes met across the counter, something shifted in the air between them. Not love. Not yet. Something hungrier. Something that tasted like danger wrapped in sugar. "You look like you're trying to escape," he said, voice smooth as river stones. Brielle's hand trembled as she poured his coffee. "What makes you say that?" "Because I used to have that same look." He smiled, and it was a smile of someone who'd already decided something about her. "How old are you?" The question should have warned her, should have sent every alarm screaming. Instead, she felt seen for the first time in her life. Old enough. Vincent came back the next day, and the next, always at 2:47, always ordering black coffee, always sitting in the booth by the window where the afternoon light cut across his face like a painter's brush. He'd watch her work, never creepy, never obvious, just present. By the third week, they were talking, really talking. He told her about his photography studio in Portland, how he'd moved to Boise after his divorce to start over, to find inspiration in ordinary places. He made her feel extraordinary. Not like the girl who smelled like French fries and had paint permanently under her fingernails. Like someone worth capturing on film. "You have an artist's eyes," he said one evening as the diner emptied. "Most people look at things. You see them." Brielle's mother worked double shifts at the hospital. Her father was a memory that sent birthday cards twice a year from somewhere in Nevada. She learned early that adults didn't notice when you needed them most. Vincent noticed everything. The way she bit her lower lip when concentrating. How she'd sketch on napkins during slow hours. The fact that she wore the same 3 outfits in rotation because money was tight but pride was tighter. "Come to my studio," he said one Friday evening. "Let me photograph you. Real art, not the commercial stuff I do to pay bills. You be my muse." Every 17-year-old girl with a lonely heart wants to be someone's muse. She went, The studio occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse near the river. Exposed brick walls held photographs that stole her breath. Women caught in moments of raw vulnerability. Faces half-shadowed. Bodies curved like questions marks. Beauty that bruised. Wine, Vincent offered, already pouring before she answered. Brielle had never tasted wine that didn't come from a box. This vintage was dark and complicated, sliding down her throat like permission. The camera clicked. Once, twice, 100 times. "Don't pose," Vincent murmured from behind the lens. "Just be. Let me see who you are when no one's watching." She'd worn her best dress, a thrift store find, emerald green with tiny buttons down the back. Under his gaze, it felt like the most expensive thing in the world. He moved closer. The camera disappeared. Brielle. Her name sounded different in his mouth. Richer. "Do you know how rare you are?" His hand touched her shoulder. Not aggressive. Gentle. The touch of someone who'd been waiting for permission that she didn't know she'd already granted. She should have left. Should have recognized a moment for what it was. A man 3 decades older, engineering intimacy with surgical precision. Instead, she leaned into his palm. "I've never felt this before," she whispered. "Neither have I." The lie was perfect. Practice. He'd been perfecting it for years with girls whose names she'd never know. That first kiss tasted like red wine and future regrets. His lips were experience, coaxing responses from her body that she didn't recognize. She felt ancient and newborn at the same time. "We can't tell anyone," Vincent said later, his fingers tracing patterns on her collarbone. "They wouldn't understand. People are so limited in their thinking." Translation: "What we're doing is wrong, but I'm going to make you complicit in hiding it." She nodded against his chest, already learning the language of secrets. For 6 weeks, Brielle lived 2 lives. Daytime girl who served pancakes and pretended homework mattered. Nighttime woman who slipped through Vincent's door after her mother's car disappeared down the street, who learned that desire could feel like drowning and you beg for more water. He photographed her constantly. Clothed, partially clothed, not clothed at all. Each click of the shutter felt like validation, like proof she was special. "These are just for us," he promised, "are for art's sake." She believed him because she needed to, because the alternative, that she was being documented, cataloged, collected like all the others, was too horrifying to consider. Vincent had a wife once, Catherine. He mentioned her rarely, only when Brielle asked direct questions. "She didn't understand me," he'd say, the classic refrain of men who want understanding without effort. "Wanted me to be someone safe, someone boring, but that's not who I am." What he didn't mention, Catherine had been 19 when they met. He'd been 34. There's a pattern to predators. They don't evolve. They repeat. By week 7, the wine started appearing earlier. The photographs took longer. Vincent's touches became more possessive, fingers gripping harder, leaving thumbprint bruises on her hips that she'd hide under jeans. "You're mine," he'd whisper, and she'd mistake ownership for devotion. Then came the night everything shattered. Brielle arrived at the studio to find Vincent on the phone, his voice sharp with an edge she'd never heard before. "I don't care what you want, Catherine. The answer is no." Pause. "Because you lost the right to ask me for anything when you walked out." He slammed the phone down, and when he turned to Brielle, his eyes held something cold, something that made her stomach clench. "My ex-wife." He poured himself whiskey, not wine. "She's trying to blackmail me, threatening to tell people about my relationships." The word hung between them like smoke. Relationships. Plural. There have been others? Brielle's voice cracked. Vincent crossed to her in 3 strides, hands cupping her face with practiced tenderness. "No one who mattered. No one like you. But Catherine wants to destroy me, and she'll use anything, twist anything to do it." He kissed her hard enough to hurt. "I need you to trust me," he breathed against her mouth. "Can you do that?" She wanted to say no, Wanted to ask how many others there had been, what relationships meant, why his ex-wife had ammunition to use against him. Instead, she nodded, because leaving would mean admitting she'd been wrong, that the past 6 weeks had been a lie, that she'd given pieces of herself to someone who collected broken girls, like other men collected stamps. And Brielle Mitchell wasn't ready to face that truth. Not yet, but the truth was already circling, already moving toward them with the inevitability of winter. Within 2 weeks, someone would be dead, and the question that would haunt courtrooms and true crime podcasts for years would echo through the halls of justice. When the victim becomes a villain, and the villain claims victimhood, who do you believe?
Welcome to True Crime Files HQ, where we uncover gripping true and fictional crime stories that keep you hooked and leave you with powerful life lessons. Thank you so much for stopping by. Your support means everything. If you love stories that shock, inspire, and make you think, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a chilling new story from us. And remember, every story hides a truth. Stay curious, stay safe.
Catherine Hawthorne hadn't thought about her ex-husband in 3 years. Therapy had helped. Distance had helped more. The 1,200 miles between Boise and her new life in Albuquerque felt like the exact right amount of space between her past and her sanity. Then her sister sent the photograph. Saw this on his public portfolio page. The text message read, "Please tell me this isn't what I think it is." Catherine's hands went numb before she even opened the image. The girl couldn't have been older than 18. Maybe younger. Dark hair spilling over bare shoulders. Eyes closed in expression that Catherine remembered making herself once. That particular vulnerability that comes from trusting someone who's earned nothing. The photograph was tasteful. Artistic, even. But Catherine knew Vincent's work the way you know the shape of a knife that's cut you before. She dialed his number before conscious thought could stop her. "Catherine." His voice held surprised pleasure. "It's been so long." "How old is she?" Silence. Then, "I don't know what you're referring to." "The girl in the photographs, Vincent. The one who looks like she's still in high school." "How old is she?" "You're overreacting." Those 3 words. The same 3 words he'd used when she'd found messages on a phone from a student at the community college where he'd taught weekend workshops. When she discovered he'd been mentoring a 20-year-old waitress. When the pattern had finally become impossible to ignore. "I'm calling the police," Catherine said. "And tell them what?" "That a professional photographer has photographs in his portfolio, that consenting adults are allowed to pose for art." His tone shifted. Became the velvet-wrapped threat she remembered. "We both know you won't call anyone, Catherine, because then I'd have to explain to them why you're so obsessed with my life. How you've been accessing my website, monitoring my business. That starts looking like harassment." The line went dead. Catherine stared at her phone, rage and helplessness warring in her chest. She knew Vincent's playbook, knew he'd document every one of her calls, save every message, build a case that painted her as the unstable ex-wife who couldn't move on. But she also knew something he didn't expect. She knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. Years of marriage had meant years of secrets shared in pillow talk. Bank accounts he'd hidden from the IRS. Business expenses that weren't exactly business. The envelope of photographs he kept in their bedroom safe. The one she found 3 days before filing for divorce. Photographs of girls who all looked remarkably similar. Young, vulnerable, special. Catherine made 3 phone calls that night. The first was to a private investigator in Boise named Marcus Chun. "I need everything on Vincent Hawthorne. Focus on the last 6 months. Specifically, focus on any teenage girls he's been photographing." The second was to her lawyer. "Hypothetically, if someone were engaging in inappropriate relationships with minors, what would I need as evidence?" The third call she didn't make. She drafted the email instead, fingers trembling over keys. This is going to sound insane, but I think my ex-husband is preying on a teenage girl. I don't have proof yet. I don't even know her name. But I know him. I know what he does. And I can't stay silent this time. She sent it to the Boise Police Department's tip line at 11:47 p.m. Then she waited. Back in Boise, Brielle was discovering that secrets have weight. They accumulate in your chest until breathing becomes work. Vincent had become different since that phone call. More possessive, more paranoid. He'd installed a new lock on the studio door. Started checking his phone obsessively, asking her questions that felt like tests. You haven't told anyone about us, right? If someone asked about me, you keep quiet? You love me, don't you? You protect me? Each question tightened the noose she didn't yet realize she was wearing. The photographs had changed too. Less artistic, more documentary. He'd position her in specific poses, specific lighting, then spend hours on a computer doing something she was allowed to see. It's technical editing, he'd say when she asked. Boring stuff. But once, when he'd left the room, she'd glimpsed the screen. Folders labeled with years. Subfolders labeled with names. Girls' names. Dozens of them. She closed the laptop before she could see more. Some truths are too heavy to carry. At Romano's diner, Brielle's co-worker Stella had started asking questions. You seem different, Stella said during a Tuesday lunch rush, loading dirty plates with aggressive efficiency. Like distant. You in trouble? I'm fine. Because you know you can tell me anything, right? Even if it's bad. Especially if it's bad. Brielle wanted to confess everything. Wanted to say, I'm sleeping with men old enough to be my father, and it feels like love, but sometimes at night, when I'm alone, it feels like drowning, and I don't know which feeling is telling the truth. Instead, she said, I'm just tired. School and work, you know. Stella didn't look convinced, but the bell rang signaling new customers, and the moment passed. That evening, Vincent picked Brielle up 3 blocks from her house. Their usual protocol. But instead of driving to the studio, he headed west toward the foothills. Where are we going? Somewhere we can talk without interruptions. His jaw was tight, fingers gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckle intensity. They parked at a turnout overlooking the valley. Boise spread below them like scattered jewels, city lights beginning to pierce the dusk. Vincent turned to her, and his face held something she'd never seen before. Fear. My ex-wife is trying to destroy me, he said. She's threatened to go to the police. Tell them lies about my relationships. About you. Brielle's stomach dropped. What kind of lies? That I manipulate young women. That I'm some kind of predator. He laughed, but it sounded broken. It's insane. Everything between us has been real, hasn't it? You chose this. You wanted this. Had she? The question flickered and died before she could examine it too closely. Of course, Brielle whispered. I need you to do something for me. Vincent pulled out his phone, opened the voice recording app. I need you to say on record that our relationship is consensual, that I've never forced you to do anything, that you're here because you want to be. Every instinct Brielle had screamed that this was wrong, that she was being positioned, prepared, turned into ammunition for a war she didn't understand. But Vincent's hand was on her thigh, thumb tracing circles that felt like comfort and coercion at once. Please, Brielle, I'm terrified of losing you, of losing everything because my ex-wife can't let go. She looked at the recording app, red button waiting, ready to capture whatever truth or lie she offered next. Okay, she heard herself say. The recording lasted 4 minutes. For minutes of Brielle Mitchell, 17 years old, swearing that she was in love, that she'd never been manipulated, that Vincent Hawthorne was a good man being persecuted by a bitter ex-wife. When it ended, Vincent pulled her close and kissed her forehead. You just saved my life, he murmured. But the thing about salvation is that it can look identical to damnation until you're too far in to tell the difference. Mark Ishchin was good at his job. Too good. Sometimes. 3 days after Catherine hired him, he was sitting in his car outside Romano's diner with a manila folder thick with information. Brielle Mitchell, 17, mother worked nights at St. Luke's Hospital, father out of the picture, honor student with a talent for art, struggling to pay for college applications, textbook vulnerable. He'd followed her twice now, watched her slip into Vincent Hawthorne's studio after dark, emerge hours later with that particular walking pattern of someone learning adult consequences in real time. The photographs on Vincent's website were professional, legal, technically, but Marcus had been doing this work for 15 years. He knew the difference between art and grooming. He called Catherine. "I've got bad news and worse news," he said. "The bad news is I was right. He's got a girl, 17 years old. And the worst news? She's in love with him. Or thinks she is. Which means if we push this to the police, she'll protect him. We need something concrete. Something that proves coercion, manipulation. Otherwise, it's just two people's word against each other. And he's very good at building plausible deniability." Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if we talked to her, woman to woman? I could tell her what he did to me, warn her. "That'll backfire," Marcus interrupted. "She'll tell him immediately, and he'll use it to strengthen their bond. Nothing makes a teenage girl defend a bad man faster than telling her he's bad. So, what do we do?" Marcus watched Brielle through the diner window, laughing at something a customer said, looking so unbearably young. "We wait," he said, "and we document everything. Because men like Vincent Hawthorne always make mistakes, always push too far. Neither of them knew how prophetic those words would be, or how soon Vincent's next mistake would turn everything into a nightmare that no one could wake up from, because across town, Vincent Hawthorne was making a decision, a permanent one. What Brielle didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Vincent had already written her into his will 6 months earlier, before the police calls, before Catherine's investigation, before everything fell apart. He'd been planning something. The question investigators would wrestle with for months. Was he planning his own death or hers? Stay with me, because the truth is worse than you think. The thing about lies is they need constant maintenance. Like houseplants, they require regular attention, or they wither and reveal the truth underneath. Vincent's lies were wilting. It started small. The bank calling about suspicious withdrawals. A former student showing up at the studio demanding payment for photographs Vincent had promised were just between us, but had turned up on a stock photography site. His landlord mentioning that someone had been asking questions about his lease, his habits, his visitors. Catherine was closing in. Vincent could feel it the way animals feel earthquakes before they hit. He sat in his studio at 2 a.m. on a Thursday, surrounded by photographs of Brielle. Hundreds of them. She was everywhere, laughing, sleeping, vulnerable in ways that made his chest tight with something that wasn't quite love, but close enough that he convinced himself it was the same thing. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Hawthorne, this is Detective Ramirez with Boise PD. We'd like to ask you some questions about your photography business. Please contact us at your earliest convenience." The message was professionally worded, polite, but Vincent had been playing this game long enough to know what questions meant. Investigation, scrutiny, everything he'd built, the carefully cultivated reputation, the client list, the freedom crumbling, all because Catherine couldn't let him be happy. He poured bourbon with shaking hands and made a decision that would change everything. He was going to eliminate the problem. Permanently. Not Brielle. Never Brielle. She was the only good thing in a contaminated life. Catherine, the thought arrived fully formed, like it had been waiting in the wings of his mind for years. She was the source of all his troubles. Remove her, and the investigation would stall. Without a complainant, without someone pushing police to care, he'd be fine. Vincent had never considered himself capable of violence. But then again, He'd never considered himself a predator either, and multiple teenage girls could testify differently. We're all capable of things we swear we'd never do. The trigger just has to be the right one. He texted Brielle, "Need to see you. Important. Tonight." She arrived at 3 a.m., worried eyes and sleep-mussed hair. "What's wrong?" "Everything's about to fall apart," Vincent said. And for the first time in their relationship, he told her something close to the truth. "The police want to question me about inappropriate relationships. My ex-wife has been building a case. They're going to try to paint me as some kind of monster." Brielle's face went pale. "What does that mean for us?" "It means I need to handle Catherine before she destroys everything." He watched Brielle's expression, calculating. She lives in Albuquerque. If I could talk to her face to face, make her understand she's wrong about me, this could all go away. So go talk to her. "I can't go alone. If I show up alone, she'll call the cops immediately. But if you came with me..." He took Brielle's hands, voice dropping to that intimate register that always worked. "If she sees us together, sees how happy you are, maybe she'll realize she's wrong, that what we have is real." Every single word was manipulation. Brielle was being transformed from girlfriend to alibi, from lover to shield, and she had no idea. "When would we go?" "Tomorrow. We'll drive through the night, talk to her, be back by Sunday. Your mom works weekends, right? She'll never know you were gone." Brielle should have said no, should have recognized the escalation, the desperation, the way Vincent was pulling her deeper into something that smelled like gasoline and matches. Instead, she said, "Okay." Because at 17, you still believe that love means following someone into the dark, even when that dark is about to become absolute. I need you to pause here and drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever ignored red flags because you wanted so badly to believe someone cared about you? No judgment, just honesty. Because understanding how manipulation works is how we protect the next Brielle Mitchell. And if this story is hitting different than you expected, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear this. They left Boise at 7 p.m. Friday evening. Vincent's car was a sleek BMW that still smelled like leather and money. Brielle felt simultaneously adult and childlike in the passenger seat, watching Idaho disappear in the rearview mirror. Vincent was quieter than usual, tense. His jaw worked constantly, grinding molars while classic rock played low on the radio. "Tell me about Catherine." Brielle said somewhere near the Utah border. "What do you want to know?" "Why did you marry her?" Vincent was silent for so long Brielle thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I thought I loved her. She was young, beautiful, saw me differently than other people did, made me feel like I was special." The parallel was so obvious it hurt, but Brielle's mind skittered away from implications she wasn't ready to face. "What changed?" "She got older." Vincent's voice went flat. "Started questioning me, wanting me to be someone boring and safe. Accused me of things that weren't true. Or weren't true the way she claimed they were. Were there other girls?" The question escaped before Brielle could stop it. Vincent's hands tightened on the wheel. "Before you?" "Yes, but none of them mattered. None of them were you." It's what she needed to hear. So she chose to believe it. They crossed into New Mexico as dawn broke, the landscape turning rust-red and ancient. Albuquerque emerged from desert heat, like a mirage, all adobe and sprawl. Vincent had Catherine's address. He'd kept tabs on her for 3 years, though he'd never admit that to Brielle. Tracking your ex-wife's movements crosses lines that even he recognized were problematic. They parked 2 blocks from Catherine's apartment complex. "Wait here," Vincent said. "Let me talk to her first. Smooth things over. Then I'll call you in to meet her. Are you sure?" "Trust me." He kissed her forehead. "This is all going to work out." Brielle watched him walk away, tall and confident, looking like a man who'd never hurt anyone in his life. She didn't know it would be the last time she'd see Vincent Hawthorne alive. Catherine was making coffee when her doorbell rang at 9:15 a.m. She knew who it was before she opened the door. Some instincts never die. Vincent stood on her threshold looking haggard, desperate, not the composed manipulator from her memories. "You need to stop," he said without preamble. "Whatever you think you're doing, you need to stop. I'm protecting a kid you're hurting." Catherine kept her voice steady. "Same as I wish someone had protected me." "Protected you?" Vincent laughed, bitter and sharp. "I gave you everything. Made you into someone interesting. Without me, you were just another." "Just another what, Vincent?" "Another vulnerable girl you could mold into whatever sick fantasy you needed." His face twisted. "You don't understand. You never understood. What Brielle and I have is—" "Brielle?" Catherine's stomach dropped. "That's her name? The 17-year-old you're raping." "I'm not." Vincent's voice rose. "It's not like that. She wants this. I have proof. I have recordings. I have evidence that you've been grooming a child." Catherine pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police right now." What happened next happened fast. Vincent lunged forward, grabbing for her phone. Catherine stumbled backward into her apartment. They struggled. Two bodies locked in combat that was years overdue. The detective's business card was still on Catherine's counter from when she'd spoken with them yesterday. She'd told them everything about Vincent's pattern, about Brielle, about the photographs. Vincent saw it, saw his name written in an investigator's careful handwriting. Something in him snapped. "You're destroying my life," he hissed, hands around Catherine's wrists. "Years of work, my reputation, everything. You destroyed it yourself." Catherine wrenched free, backing toward her kitchen. "The moment you decided teenage girls were your preferred victim." That word, victim, hit Vincent like a physical blow. "I never victimized anyone," he said, and he believed it. That's the terrifying thing about predators. They genuinely believe they're the good guys. "I love them. I love her. You're incapable of love." Catherine's hand found the knife block behind her. "You only know how to consume." Vincent saw the knife the same moment Catherine grabbed it. "Put that down." His voice changed, became the command he'd used on countless girls. "Catherine, put it down." She held it steady, pointed at his chest. "Get out of my apartment." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Ex-husband and ex-wife. Predator and survivor. The air between them was compressed with years of resentment, manipulation, and pain. Vincent moved first. He grabbed the knife, and Catherine didn't pull back fast enough. The blade caught his palm, opened a red line across his skin. "You stabbed me," he said, shocked, staring at his bleeding hand, like it belonged to someone else. "Get out." Catherine screamed. Vincent ran, down the stairs, out into morning heat, blood dripping from his hand in rhythmic drops. His mind was white noise, static and panic. He left Brielle in the car 2 blocks away. He never made it back to her. The official story would be simple. Vincent Hawthorne died of a heart attack in an alley 3 blocks from his ex-wife's apartment. Stress-induced cardiac event, massive and fatal. He was dead before paramedics arrived. But the unofficial story, the true story, was more complicated. Brielle waited in that car for 6 hours. When Vincent didn't return, when his phone went straight to voicemail, when police cars suddenly flooded the neighborhood, she finally got out and walked toward Catherine's apartment. A police officer stopped her a block away. "You can't go down there, miss. There's been an incident." "What kind of incident?" "I'm looking for someone." "Vincent Hawthorne. He's—" The officer's face changed. "What's your name?" "Brielle Mitchell." And just like that, everything detonated. By midnight, Brielle was sitting in an interrogation room at Albuquerque Police Department, giving a statement that would unravel the next 2 years of her life. Yes, she'd been in a relationship with Vincent. Yes, she was 17. Yes, she'd come to Albuquerque with him. No, she didn't know why. The detective across from her, Ramirez, same one who called Vincent, looked at her with something between pity and frustration. Ms. Mitchell, I need you to understand something. Vincent Hawthorne was not who you thought he was. They showed her the files. Other girls. Other statements. A pattern spanning 20 years. They showed her the photographs on Vincent's computer. Not just of her. Of dozens of girls who all looked eerily similar. They showed her evidence of manipulation, so calculated it had its own methodology. And Brielle Mitchell, 17 years old, sitting in a police station 800 miles from home, felt her entire reality crack and res had her. The man she loved had never existed. The man she trusted was a ghost. And now he was dead, and she was what? Victim? Accomplice? Fool? All three. None of the above. When they finally let her call her mother at 4 a.m., Brielle could barely speak through her tears. "Mom," she whispered, "I need you to come get me. I did something terrible." But the terrible thing wasn't what she thought it was. The real terrible thing was just beginning, because in a storage unit in Boise, Idaho, there was a safe deposit box with Vincent's name on it. And in that box was an insurance policy Vincent had purchased 6 months earlier. Beneficiary, Brielle Mitchell. $2 million. And suddenly, Vincent Hawthorne's convenient heart attack was starting to look a lot less convenient to investigators who specialized in finding patterns where coincidence claimed to be. Before we go into the next chapter of this story, I need to know, do you think Brielle knew about the insurance policy? Was she playing the long game, or was she genuinely clueless? Drop your theory in the comments, because the evidence goes both ways. And that's exactly what made this case a nightmare for prosecutors. Don't forget to subscribe. The next chapter reveals what was in that storage unit. And trust me, it changes everything you think you know about this case. The funeral was small, disturbingly so for a man who claimed to touch so many lives. Brielle attended from the back row, wearing dark sunglasses indoors like armor. Her mother sat beside her, stone-faced and silent. They'd barely spoken since Albuquerque. What was there to say? "I'm sorry I trusted a predator, didn't quite cut it. I'm sorry I was 17 and stupid and desperate to feel special," sounded like an excuse. So Brielle said nothing, just watched as Catherine Hawthorne placed a single white rose on the casket. A gesture that looked like closure, but Brielle suspected was satisfaction. Catherine caught her eye across the funeral home. The look that passed between them was complex, not quite sympathy, not quite blame, more like recognition. Two women who'd loved the same monster, separated by time and consequences. After the service, Catherine approached. Up close, she looked exhausted, older than her 43 years, like grief had aged her in fast forward. "Walk with me?" she asked. They ended up at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the funeral home. Generic corporate comfort, with bad art on the walls. Catherine ordered tea. Brielle couldn't imagine eating or drinking anything. "You're probably wondering why I'm talking to you," Catherine said. "I assumed it was to tell me how stupid I was." "You weren't stupid. You were 17. Catherine stirred honey into her tea with mechanical precision. "There's a difference. Everyone keeps saying that. My therapist, the detectives, my mom. Like being young absolves me of responsibility. It doesn't absolve you, but it contextualizes you." Catherine looked up, and her eyes held something fierce. Vincent was 52. He'd been perfecting manipulation for 3 decades. You never stood a chance. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they made Brielle want to scream. Because if she'd never stood a chance, what did that say about her agency? Her choices? And here's where the story takes a turn that'll make your stomach drop. Because what Catherine was about to tell Brielle would reframe everything. Not just about Vincent's death, but about the months leading up to it. About what Vincent had been planning. About who else he'd contacted. About the girls who came before Brielle. And about the one who didn't survive. "The police told me about the life insurance," Brielle said quietly. Catherine's expression didn't change. "I know. They think I'm involved. That we planned it somehow. Are you?" The question hung between them like smoke. "No." Brielle's voice cracked. I didn't even know about the money, about any of it. I thought... She laughed, bitter. I thought he loved me. He probably believed he did. Catherine took a sip of tea. That's what makes men like Vincent so dangerous. They convince themselves their obsession is love. Makes it easier to justify the damage. Did he damage you? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then, I was 19 when we met. He was 34. Told me I was mature for my age, special, not like other girls. Classic lines. But they worked because I wanted them to work. Needed them to work. She paused, gathering pieces of a story she'd probably told therapists 100 times. We got married 6 months later. Everyone thought I was so lucky. Older, established man sweeping a community college student off her feet. Romance novel bullshit. When did you realize? The first time I found messages from another girl. I was 23. He swore it was nothing, just mentoring, and I believed him because the alternative meant admitting my marriage was a lie. Catherine's hands trembled slightly around her mug. It took me 14 years to leave. 14 years of finding evidence, making excuses, hating myself for being too weak to walk away. By the time I finally filed for divorce, I'd lost myself completely, had to rebuild from scratch. Brielle felt tears tracking down her face. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. Just learn. Catherine reached across the table, stopped just short of touching Brielle's hand. Vincent died of a heart attack. Medical examiner confirmed it. Natural causes triggered by stress. That's the official story, and it's true. But there's a difference between what's true and what's justice. Catherine's voice went soft. I went to his apartment that morning ready to kill him. Not literally, though I fantasized about it for years. But kill the power he had over me. Kill the narrative that I was the bitter ex-wife who couldn't move on. She met Brielle's eyes directly. When he grabbed me, when we struggled, when that knife cut his hand, I wanted him to feel one fraction of the pain he'd caused. Not physical pain. The other kind. The kind that makes you question your own reality. Did you kill him? Brielle whispered. No, his heart did that. Catherine's smile was sad. But I can't say I mourned him, and I won't apologize for that. They sat in silence. Two women connected by the ghost of a predator. The insurance money, Catherine said finally. Don't take it. What? Don't take it. Donate it. Give it to organizations that help trafficking victims or abuse survivors. Because if you keep it, you'll never stop wondering if somewhere deep down you wanted him dead. And that question will poison the rest of your life. Brielle hadn't considered keeping it. Hadn't considered anything beyond surviving the next 5 minutes. I just want to forget this ever happened, she said. You can't forget. Catherine stood, gathering her purse. But you can choose what it means. Vincent tried to write your story. Don't let him finish it from a grave. She left money for both their drinks and walked out into afternoon sunlight, leaving Brielle alone with choices she was still too young to understand. The criminal investigation lasted 7 months. In that time, Brielle Mitchell aged a decade. You could see it in her face, the way teenage softness hardened into something more guarded. Survival has a specific look, and she wore like armor. The evidence was circumstantial. Damning but circumstantial. Yes, Brielle had traveled to Albuquerque with Vincent. Yes, she was 2 blocks away when he died. Yes, she was the beneficiary of a life insurance policy she claimed not to know about. But the medical examiner was unequivocal. Vincent Hawthorne died of natural causes. Massive coronary infarction brought on by stress, genetic predisposition, and a lifetime of poor health choices masked by expensive suits and good lighting. No poison, no violence, no smoking gun. The knife wound Catherine had inflicted was superficial. Wouldn't have killed anyone, barely required stitches if he'd bothered to get medical attention. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Angela Torres who built a career on impossible cases, sat across from Brielle in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Here's where we are, Torres said, spreading crime scene photos across the table. I believe Vincent Hawthorne groomed you. I believe he manipulated you into that relationship. I believe he damaged you in ways you're still discovering. She paused, letting those words settle. But I can't prove you killed him, because you didn't kill him. His genetics and his guilty conscience killed him. Brielle's hands were shaking. So it's over? The criminal case? Yes, we're not filing charges. Torres leaned forward. But, Brielle, I need you to understand something. The absence of charges doesn't mean absence of consequences. There are people who will always believe you got away with murder, who will see that insurance policy and construct narratives where you're the mastermind. I didn't want any of this. I know. Torres' voice softened fractionally. But wanting and getting are different things. You're 17 years old, and you survived something that destroys most people. The question now is, what do you do with that survival? Brielle donated the insurance money exactly as Catherine suggested. Every penny went to organizations fighting child sexual exploitation and supporting survivors of grooming. The media had a field day with it. Half the headlines called her a tragic victim, making amends. The other half suggested it was a calculated move to seem innocent. You can't win when the internet decides you're a villain, even when you're actually a victim. She graduated high school through independent study, avoiding the hallways where everyone knew her story. Applied to art schools under a different name, her mother's maiden name Morrison, hoping distance and anonymity would give her space to breathe. On her 18th birthday, Brielle drove to the cemetery where Vincent was buried. She didn't know why. Didn't have anything to say to a dead predator who'd stolen a year of her life and almost destroyed the rest. But standing at his grave, looking at the simple headstone his brother had purchased, Catherine had refused to contribute. Brielle felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Never forgiveness. But understanding. Vincent Hawthorne had been human. Deeply broken. Inexcusably harmful, but human. He convinced himself his damage was love. That his obsession was devotion. That the girls he collected were willing participants in artistic collaboration, rather than prey in a pattern he'd been repeating for decades. Predators don't see themselves as monsters. That's what makes them so dangerous. I don't forgive you, Brielle said to the headstone, but I'm done letting you define me. She turned and walked away, leaving Vincent Hawthorne in the past where he belonged. Catherine Hawthorne sent Brielle a letter 6 months after Vincent's funeral. It arrived in a purple envelope. Catherine's handwriting elegant and careful. Dear Brielle, I'm writing because I think you need to know something I couldn't say at the coffee shop. Something I've never told anyone. When I was 25, I found out I was pregnant. Vincent was thrilled, said it would complete our family, make everything perfect. I was terrified because I knew what he was, knew his patterns, knew that bringing a child into his world would be signing up for 2 decades of hypervigilance. I miscarried at 12 weeks. Vincent mourned. I felt relief so profound it scared me. That's when I knew I had to leave. Because any woman who feels grateful her pregnancy ended rather than bring a child into proximity with their father, that woman is living in hell. It took me 8 more years to actually walk away. 8 years of making excuses, hiding evidence, pretending everything was fine. I'm telling you this because you're young enough to build a completely different life. You don't have to spend a decade trapped in the aftermath of someone else's damage. You get to choose who you become next. Vincent tried to write your story. He failed. Now you write it. With hope. Catherine. Brielle read that letter 17 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a box with other things she wasn't ready to process but couldn't throw away. 5 years later, Brielle Morrison, she'd legally changed her name, stood in a gallery in Portland, Oregon, surrounded by her photographs. Not the kind Vincent had taken. These were different, raw and honest in ways that commercial art rarely achieved. Images of women at various stages of healing. Faces that told stories of survival without speaking a word. The exhibition was called After just that. No explanation necessary. A reviewer from the Portland Tribune wrote, Morrison's work forces viewers to confront uncomfortable truths about vulnerability, power, and the long shadow cast by trauma. These aren't victim portraits. They're warrior documentation. Catherine Hawthorne flew in for the opening. They'd stayed in a regular contact, emails every few months, texts on birthdays. The relationship between them was complicated, built on shared damage and mutual understanding. Vincent would have hated this, Catherine said, studying a photograph of a woman's scarred hands holding a book titled Surviving. Good. Brielle smiled. That means I did it right. They stood together, two women who'd loved the same monster and lived to tell about it. Not the whole truth. Some details were too private, too painful for public consumption, but enough truth to matter. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he hadn't died? Catherine asked. Brielle considered the question carefully. Every day. And then I remind myself that wondering is pointless. He did die. I did survive. Those are the only facts that matter now. Are you happy? It was the kind of question that used to make Brielle flinch. Happiness felt like betrayal when you'd survived something others hadn't. But somewhere in the past 5 years, she'd learned that survival and joy weren't mutually exclusive, that you could carry trauma and still build something beautiful. I'm working on it, Brielle said. Some days are better than others. But yeah, I'm working on it. Catherine squeezed her hand. That's all any of us can do. There was one piece of evidence that never made it into official reports. Something Marcus Chun, the private investigator Catherine had hired, discovered but couldn't figure out what to do with. 3 weeks before Vincent died, he'd taken out a second life insurance policy, this one naming Catherine as beneficiary. $2 million, same as Brielle's. Marcus had found by accident, doing follow-up research after the case closed. The insurance company confirmed it was legitimate, signed, witnessed, and active. He'd called Catherine immediately. Why would he do that? She'd asked, voice hollow. I have a theory, Marcus said carefully, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. I think Vincent knew he was dying. I think he'd known for months. His medical records show he'd been having chest pains, refusing treatment. And I think he was trying to, I don't know, make amends? Control the narrative even from death? Set up some kind of twisted legacy? Catherine had gone silent for a long moment. Or, she said finally, he was trying to implicate us both. Make it look like we had motive. Turn his natural death into a murder investigation that would destroy us even if we were never convicted. Marcus had no response to that, because it was entirely plausible. Vincent Hawthorne was exactly the kind of narcissist who'd orchestrate chaos from beyond the grave. Catherine never told Brielle about the second policy, never claimed the money, just let it sit in bureaucratic limbo, unclaimed and unwanted. Some inheritances are too poisonous to accept. So here's the question I promised you at the beginning. Who was really the victim? Was it Brielle, 17 and groomed by a predator who perfected his technique over decades? Was it Catherine, who spent 14 years married to a man who saw her as a possession rather than a person? Was it the other girls, the ones we didn't talk about, the ones whose names appeared in Vincent's files but never in news reports? Or was there no victim at all? Just a predator who died before justice could touch him, leaving behind a trail of damaged women and unanswerable questions? I want to know what you think. Drop a comment right now. No right answer. No wrong answer. Just your honest take on where guilt and innocence land in this nightmare. And here's my real question, the one that matters more than any verdict. Can you be victimized by someone and still be responsible for your healing? Because that's what this story is actually about. Not murder, not insurance policies, not even Vincent Hawthorne, though he was the catalyst for everything. It's about two women who refused to let their trauma have the final word, who built lives from the rubble of someone else's destruction, who chose, actively, daily, painfully chose, to be more than what was done to them. If this story made you feel something, I need 3 things from you. Hit that like button. This is the kind of story YouTube's algorithm usually buries because it's uncomfortable. Prove them wrong. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I cover cases that make you question everything you thought you knew about guilt, innocence, and justice. Share this video. Not from me. For the Brielles out there right now who think what they're experiencing is love. For the Catherines who are 8 years into a marriage they know is destroying them but can't figure out how to leave. This story isn't entertainment. It's a warning. It's a roadmap. It's proof that you can survive the unsurvivable. Final thought. Vincent Hawthorne died 5 years ago, but the damage he caused is still reverberating. That's the real horror of predators. They don't just destroy you in the moment. They plant explosives set to detonate years later. But here's what Vincent didn't count on. Survivors are bomb diffusers. We learn to dismantle the damage. Slowly, painfully, but we learn. Brielle Mitchell, Brielle Morrison, is building a life Vincent Hawthorne doesn't get to touch. Catherine Hawthorne is healing on her own terms. And you, if you're watching this because something in this story felt familiar, you can survive this too. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next investigation. And remember, the people who hurt you don't get to write your ending. You do.